Imagine being locked alone in a maximum security solitary cell for 10 months with zero human contact, and suddenly, you're 5 months pregnant. That's exactly what happened to Emily Carter, a 32-year-old inmate in one of Texas's toughest federal prisons. The walls around her weren't just thick, they were impenetrable. Concrete walls, steel doors locked 3 times over, no windows to the outside world. Cameras watched every move, and only female staff were allowed near her. No male guards, no visitors, no exceptions. And yet, against every rule, every logic, Emily's body told a story no one could explain. It was a cold, silent night when the emergency call came. Emily had collapsed in her cell, her body crumpled onto the cold cement floor, motionless. The guards rushed her to the infirmary, urgency slicing through the stillness of the prison. The nurse's hands trembled as she performed the ultrasound, her eyes widening in disbelief when the screen revealed the unmistakable flutter of a tiny heartbeat. 20 weeks along, 5 months pregnant. The room fell silent except for the faint beeping of the monitor. Nobody dared speak. How was this possible? Emily had been locked away in solitary for nearly a year. No visits, no contact with any man, no loopholes in security. The question burned hotter than the Texas sun outside. How did Emily get pregnant in complete isolation? Her eyes fluttered open, meeting the nurse's gaze with a calmness that belied the chaos around her. She whispered just one thing: "I want to have this baby." No panic, no explanations, just a quiet resolve that cut through the confusion like a knife. The prison's administration was thrown into turmoil. Every inch of protocol was scrutinized. Cameras were reviewed frame by frame, logs cross-checked with obsessive precision. Nothing. No breaches. No unauthorized access. No evidence of any man entering Emily's cell. Yet the undeniable truth stared back at them. Emily was pregnant. Whispers spread through the prison like wildfire. Some accused the system of failing spectacularly. Others whispered darker suspicions, but none dared voice them aloud. Emily sat alone, a paradox wrapped in solitude. Her pregnancy a silent rebellion against a system designed to erase her existence. Behind closed doors, investigators scrambled, chasing shadows and theories. The impossible demanded answers. But the more they searched, the more elusive the truth became. Until one overlooked detail surfaced: a tiny, almost invisible alteration in the ventilation system near Emily's cell. A narrow shaft, barely wider than a hand, connecting her world to the outside. The question hung in the air. Was this the breach that allowed the impossible to happen? Or was there a secret alliance hidden in the shadows of this fortress? As the night stretched on, the prison held its breath, knowing that the unraveling of this mystery would challenge everything they thought they knew about control, confinement, and human resilience. Emily's story was far from over, and what came next would change the lives of everyone involved forever. Emily Carter was once the kind of woman who seemed destined for greatness. She grew up in a quiet suburb of California, in a family that had always valued education and ambition. From an early age, Emily's brilliance was clear. She had a mind that thrived on complexity and a heart full of dreams. By the time she graduated high school, she earned a full scholarship to Stanford University, where she majored in molecular biology. The university halls echoed with her name. Professors spoke of her potential to revolutionize cancer research one day. To everyone who knew her, Emily was a shining star on an upward trajectory. But life, as it often does, threw her a brutal curveball. Her family's financial security began to crumble when her father's small business teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. Desperation tightened its grip, and with bills piling up, Emily felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She wanted to save her family, to keep the dreams alive, but the options were limited. So she took a risky loan, $75,000, from a man who promised quick money, but delivered her into a world far darker than the lab benches and lecture halls she was used to. Emily found herself tangled in a web she didn't fully understand, a network of drug traffickers operating under the radar, disguised behind legal fronts. Her task was simple on paper: transport packages, nothing more. But that simplicity was a lie. One day, Her courier job spiraled out of control when the authorities intercepted a shipment laced with heroin. Emily was arrested, blindsided, her dreams shattered in an instant. The courtroom was merciless. With no lawyer she trusted and no witnesses to vouch for her innocence, Emily's fate was sealed, a life sentence. The cold, hard walls of a Texas federal prison replaced the vibrant lecture halls she once called home. The life she had planned, the future she had worked so hard for, vanished overnight. Inside those walls, the isolation was suffocating. Emily was locked in solitary confinement, a cell so small and cold that days blurred into nights without distinction. The silence was deafening. No visitors, no contact with the outside world, just the constant hum of fluorescent lights and the watchful eyes of cameras that saw everything but understood nothing. In those endless hours, Emily grappled with a storm of emotions, grief for what was lost, guilt over choices made, and an aching loneliness that gnawed at her resolve. The vibrant scholar who once dreamed of curing diseases was reduced to counting cracks in the concrete, searching for meaning in a place designed to erase it. Yet, amid the despair, a flicker of something else took root. A quiet determination not to let this be the end of her story. It wasn't hope in the traditional sense. It was something rawer, harder to define. A secret she kept close, locked away with her dignity, a tiny ember burning in the darkness. Emily's world was about to shift again in a way no one could predict. Just when she thought she had lost everything, that ember would ignite into a flame. A secret that could alter the course of her fate forever. The investigation started immediately after the shocking discovery. How could Emily Carter, locked alone in solitary confinement for nearly a year, be 5 months pregnant with no one ever stepping foot inside her cell? It was a question that tore through the prison administration like wildfire, and they were desperate for answers. Security and medical teams dove into the prison's records with surgical precision. 90 days of surveillance footage were rewound, fast-forwarded, analyzed frame by frame. Every camera angle scrutinized, every shadow checked. Logs of entry and exit meticulously compared against schedules and keycard scans. The prison's electronic locks recorded every swipe and click, and not once did the data show a breach. Only authorized personnel, all female, had accessed her wing, as per protocol. Nothing out of place, no discrepancies, no overlooked mistakes. Yet Emily's condition screamed otherwise. One by one, every staff member who had been on duty during those months was summoned for interviews. The air in those interrogation rooms was thick with tension, anxiety barely masked behind stern faces. Guards exchanged furtive glances, some refusing to meet the eyes of the investigators. They all swore on their careers and families. No man ever came near Emily's cell. No rule was broken. No exceptions. The prison's high-tech security system was supposed to be foolproof. The electronic locks were state-of-the-art, requiring multi-factor authentication and biometric scans for access. Cameras were equipped with infrared and motion sensors, recording in real time to a secure server. Keycard data was encrypted, leaving no room for manipulation. The prison was among the most secure in the country, a far cry from older facilities with known security lapses. Investigators compared these protocols with standards from other federal prisons across the United States. This place was a fortress built to withstand any infiltration, internal or external. Yet here they were, grappling with a mystery that defied the most advanced technology and the strictest human oversight. Behind closed doors, frustration and fear simmered. For the officers involved, it wasn't just a breach of security, it was a breach of trust. They faced whispers of negligence, accusations they tried to silence but couldn't ignore. The prison administration was under pressure from higher-ups, their reputations hanging in the balance. In the dim light of the security room, teams pored over schematics of the prison's infrastructure. Every vent, every pipe, every crawl space examined for a clue. The stress was palpable. Each new lead brought more questions than answers. The psychological toll on the investigators was heavy. They wrestled with doubt, paranoia creeping into their ranks. Could the system they believed in so fiercely really have a flaw? Or worse, could someone inside be hiding a secret? Then, just as hope seemed to fade, a tiny detail caught the eye of a technician, a ventilation shaft near Emily's cell that looked just slightly altered. Unlike the others, this one had a new piece of fabric wedged inside, barely visible to the naked eye. A small plastic cord was wrapped tightly around a wooden spool, cleverly designed to be pulled in and out. It was an anomaly among otherwise old and dusty vents. What was this? A mistake? Or the key to a secret passage? The tension in the room was electric. This small discovery could either crack the case wide open or plunge them deeper into confusion. As the team prepared to investigate further, they knew one thing for certain. The walls of solitary confinement were about to reveal a secret no one saw coming. John Miller wasn't the kind of man you'd expect to find in a story like this. At 28, he was serving time for a violent crime, a moment of rage that shattered his life. But inside the prison walls, John was quietly rewriting his story. Once a top student in pre-med, a guy who had dreams bigger than his mistakes, he'd found a strange kind of sanctuary in the prison's maintenance crew. Fixing lights, repairing broken locks, working the technical side of the prison. It kept his mind sharp, gave him purpose. But more than that, John carried a burden that few knew about. His younger sister was seriously ill, and he was the only one left to care for her. That responsibility weighed on him every day. In the cold, harsh environment of the penitentiary, John's compassion was a flicker of warmth, and it found its way to Emily Carter. It began quietly. John heard soft sounds, a cough, a whisper, coming from the cell next to his usual work area. A tiny voice trapped behind concrete and steel. He noticed subtle signs. A piece of paper slipped through a narrow vent, a hand motioning in the shadows. At first, it was just curiosity, but soon, it became a lifeline. Through tiny notes folded carefully and handed back and forth via a ventilation shaft, Emily and John began to communicate. She told him her story. Her isolation, her desperation, her silent plea to bring life into a place designed to kill hope. John listened, and something stirred inside him. Against every rule, every danger, he made a decision. He would help her. Not for glory, not for reward, but because in that bleakness, they both craved a spark of humanity. With painstaking care, John used his access to the medical supplies, hidden vials, syringes smuggled from the infirmary during routine maintenance. Every night, after lights out, he slipped small packets containing his own sperm through the ventilation shaft. Emily, alone and terrified, learned to use the syringe herself, teaching her body to hold on to the possibility of life amid the desolation. The risks were enormous. If caught, John would face severe punishment, perhaps solitary, maybe worse. Emily, vulnerable and already condemned, was gambling everything on a chance, but neither hesitated. Their courage was quiet, unspoken, born out of desperation and an unyielding will to defy fate. The method was crude but effective. No medical expertise guided them, just raw determination and whispered instructions passed between the two prisoners. The ventilation shaft, narrow and concealed, became their secret channel of hope, a lifeline connecting two souls in confinement. This wasn't just a story about breaking rules. It was about breaking the invisible chains of despair. John's bravery wasn't in grand gestures, but in the small, dangerous acts of kindness that could cost him everything. Emily's strength was not in surrender, but in her refusal to be erased. In a place built to break spirits, two prisoners found a way to create life, against all odds. And as the months passed, that fragile secret grew into a living testament of their defiance. But as their quiet rebellion unfolded in the shadows, the prison's walls began to close in. Unknown to them, every whisper, every hidden act was inching closer to discovery. The question wasn't if they'd be found out, but when. And that moment would change everything. The night Emily went into labor, the storm outside was relentless. Rain hammered the prison roof like fists of fury, and the wind howled through the barred windows as if echoing the chaos unfolding inside her. The power flickered, plunging the facility into intermittent darkness, casting long, trembling shadows over the sterile infirmary where she was rushed. There were no modern birthing suites here, only a small, cold room guarded by the steady hands of a military doctor and a veteran nurse, whose experience was hard-earned, but whose resources were scarce. Emily's body was racked with pain, each contraction a wave crashing against her will. For 90 minutes, she fought not only against the agony, but against the suffocating fear that gripped her heart. Alone in this harsh place, stripped of freedom and surrounded by walls designed to punish, she was about to bring life into a world that had so thoroughly tried to take it away. Yet, through the haze of pain and exhaustion, a fierce determination burned within her, a silent promise to the child she carried. As the first cries of her newborn pierced the humid air, something inside Emily shifted. A smile broke through the weariness that had settled deep in her bones. It was a fragile, fleeting thing, but it was the first genuine expression of hope she had allowed herself in months. The sound of that tiny voice, raw and unfiltered, was more powerful than any sentence handed down, more significant than the cold steel bars that confined her. But birth was only the beginning of their battle. Under U.S. federal law, women sentenced to death cannot be executed while pregnant or while caring for a child under the age of 3. This legal provision became Emily's lifeline, an unexpected shield in the cruel machinery of justice. The moment her daughter's heartbeat was confirmed, her death sentence was halted, automatically converted to life imprisonment without parole. The system, rigid and unyielding, had carved out this small mercy, a glimmer of humanity in an otherwise unforgiving framework. Yet this mercy came with conditions. Emily was allowed to keep her child with her in a specially designated area of the prison, one designed to monitor both mother and infant under strict surveillance. Every movement watched, every visitor screened. The infant's world was confined to the shadow of the prison walls, a fragile life cocooned in chains. The prison was no place for a child, and every day was a fight to preserve the innocence and love that should have been their birthright. Emily adapted with a quiet resilience. Her days became a delicate balancing act between caregiver and inmate, nurturing the baby with the limited resources and support available. The nurse who had helped deliver her daughter became a constant presence, offering guidance and warmth in the cold environment. Still, the weight of their reality never lifted. The walls reminded Emily that this child was born not just into the world, but into a sentence, a legacy of confinement. This fight for new life, born in captivity, raised profound questions about justice, mercy, and humanity. Was the law truly protecting the child's best interests or merely postponing an inevitable tragedy? Could a life so tightly controlled and surveilled truly flourish, or was it condemned to grow within the suffocating shadows of a prison? Against the harshest odds, a miracle was born. But would the system allow this new life to truly thrive? There's a silence that settles over you when you realize freedom isn't just about walking out of a prison gate. For me, it was never about that moment alone. It was about holding my daughter, Lily Grace, in a world that had tried so hard to strip away every ounce of hope. In those walls, surrounded by cold steel and constant watchfulness, something fragile grew, a bond that defied the cages, a love that whispered, "We survive." The women who cared for us weren't just guards or nurses. They became quiet allies, holding space for a mother's heart to heal. Their gentle hands soothed Lily's first cries. Their patience cradled my trembling attempts to be the mother I never imagined I'd become here. I wrote it all down. The little victories, the first time Lily said "Mom," the way her eyes lit up with wonder, even in a place so dark. Those words on paper became lifelines, threads that stitched together a fractured past with the fragile fabric of our present. Outside the prison walls, a community of strangers stepped forward. Local charities, people who saw not criminals but children in need, took up the mantle of care for babies born behind bars. They fought for Lily's right to a future beyond the gray walls, nurturing her with love and hope, promising that freedom could one day mean more than just absence of chains. John, my unlikely ally, earned his second chance. His release was quiet, unceremonious, but for me, it was a chapter's end and a silent thank you whispered between two souls who dared to believe in something better. We parted without words, but with understanding. carrying the weight of what we had done and the hope that life might still be kind. Lily's future is unwritten, a story waiting to be told beyond the prison gates. She's a symbol of what resilience looks like when the world wants to forget you, of what humanity can be when love refuses to be broken. I don't know where life will take her, but I carry the hope that she'll grow in light, not shadow, in freedom, not fear. This story isn't just about crime or punishment. It's about the human spirit, how it bends but doesn't break, how even in the darkest places, light finds a way to shine. It's a reminder that behind every locked door is a heart beating for something more, something pure. If any part of this journey speaks to you, if you've ever felt trapped by circumstances beyond your control, if you've ever carried a secret hope in silence, I invite you to share your story below. Your voice matters here, in this space we've built together. And if you want to walk this path with me, to uncover more stories of strength and survival, consider joining the community by liking and subscribing to Revenge Her Way. Not because you have to, but because sometimes simply being heard is the first step to healing.